Okay, welcome to Into the Channel podcast, primarily about women's football. I'm your host, Dino Decespedes, and as always, I'm joined by my co-host, Mr. Grant Engle. What's up, man?
I'm feeling fantastic, buddy. Been away for a little while. Got some time to rest, recharge over the holidays. Hope you did the same. And I'm eager to talk some football with you.
Yep. Batteries, they all the way green on this side, so I'm feeling good. Ready to hit the home stretch. Here we are, man. End of the year already. December. Time to put some lists together. I got a little ambitious. I told you I was going to put together a top 100. I kind of backed off that, so we're probably going to downshift into a little, best 11s for the end of the year. I think that's probably feasible.
Mm-hmm. I think that's more attainable, but I loved your spirit, man. You know what? We talked about the top 100. Could we name 100 players? Sure, we could. Would they be the best 100? I think it would take us a long time to really cull that list.
Want to hear it? Here it go. We'll do best 11. We'll be back with some Champions League Match Day 5 previews and recaps. You already know what we do. A little bookend action there. Match Day 6 also happening before the end of the calendar year. But tonight, we're going to look back, but we're also going to look ahead at our U.S. Women's National Team. A good year along some dimensions. A little choppy. Got some L's in there, some home L's, not something that we're used to, but a good year for growth. And I don't know, an exciting time to be looking ahead to 2026. So what I want to do actually is, well, first check in on where we're at right now, and then talk about some of those questions that we're going to be thinking about, that we're going to be looking for when this team reconvenes next year.
I like it. We all saw what happened in 2025, and, obviously the greatest football fans in the world watch this program. We know you guys have great thoughts and opinions. You already know what you saw in 2025. So we'll spend a little bit of time on that, but credit to Dino, the great idea. Let's look ahead. We got some big questions looming in 2026.
Let's go. Well, before we get to those big 2026 questions, I guess this is also a 2026 question. Some news this week. Trinity Rodman, some contract push and pull, the league's involved, Berman's involved, Bloomberg's involved. Once Bloomberg gets involved, there's some financial rumblings and things, at play, some real stakes, we'll say. What have you been able to find out about the Trinity Rodman situation?
Well, I'm not so sure in terms of finding out, but let's talk it over, right? So everybody's seen the reports. News broke this week that NWSL Commissioner Jessica Berman rejected or vetoed, I've seen both terms used, a potential new contract between Washington Spirit and Trinity Rodman. The reporting says that the league is basically saying the proposed terms of that contract, which reportedly both Rodman and Washington Spirit were agreeing to, violated, quote, the spirit of the rules, end quote, of the league. So Megan
violated the spirit
executive director. Exactly. An interesting turn of phrase. So Megan Burke, the executive director of the NWSL Players Association, joined Sam Ewis's podcast, The Women's Game, and gave a little insight into that veto or that rejection. And she said, quote, if NWSL can interfere with the free agency rights of Trinity Rodman, they can do it to anyone, and we won't stand for that, end quote. Strong words from Burke, indeed.
Yeah, I mean, it's just such a tough situation. I mean, if it's within the letter of the law, the spirit of the law is such a weird phrase to enact here, because What are we really talking about? Like, what's the argument? And I know Berman also has like a law background, so I'm not really sure if this is PR, if that has like a code of PR pain on it, or if it's a long game situation. But to say it's against the spirit of the law seems like a pretty cut and dry case of, okay, so we lost this.
I tend to agree, buddy. And so, our longtime pals of this program have heard me reference this before. And maybe there are some people who are watching into the channel who said, hey, look, okay, we heard from the Players Association director. We've heard from pro player people on social media. I want to get a new perspective. Let's check out Into the Channel. I am literally a union organizer. So you're not getting a much different perspective from me here in terms of maybe what side I fall on. But you are dead on when you talk about one half of a labor relationship saying, well, you violated the spirit. You either, in my view, you either violate the terms of a contract or you do not violate the written terms of that contract. And so you can talk about the spirit all you want. And when Megan Burke was on Sam Muse's podcast, she basically said that, she didn't think that there was any real salary cap circumvention. And really what this is boiling down to is that the contract was backloaded. The total annual salary for Trinity Rodman in this proposed deal was going to escalate over the years. And in the 28 season and the 29 season, it would be well over $1 million, according to reports from Meg Linehan of The Athletic. And the line of demarcation there is that the NWSL media rights deal expires in 2027. So if you put all this reporting together, it certainly sounds like, and I think this has pretty much been indicated in the reporting, that you backload the deal, and then with the higher salary for Rodman coming with the expectation that the league is going to sign a larger media rights deal in 2027, therefore increasing the revenue, therefore increasing the salary cap for each team.
So is the situation that a 4-year deal has to fall within the 2 years, or do we know if they're missing like those projections for year 3, year 4, and that's the situation? Because it just seems so weird to use the phrase spirit of the law, because that to me makes me think that maybe year 3, year 4 are not yet defined. On one hand, I always like to take the position of, hey, this is a young league figuring stuff out. In this instance, it's a little tougher to do that because, again, that phrase is just the wrong phrase to use in that instance, because it's basically an admission that it is fair play by the letter of the law. That's basically implicitly what we're saying by that. But what are the next steps here? Where do you think this lands? Because I do want to also inject a little bit of reporting that you and I did, the final in the mix zone. When we talked to Trinity Rodman. The vibe did kind of feel a little bit like maybe the end of that Washington Spirit chapter, just minus the contract discussions. Just in that moment, rewinding back to the moment, it did feel maybe like it could have been the end of something for Trinity and the Spirit.
It definitely could have, and I wonder how much of that could have been just the crushing finality of losing a final that Rodman couldn't play the full 90, and there are probably a lot of things weighing on her in that moment. But to your original question of like how speculative is the salary cap in 28 and 29, and the answer is super speculative, because again, with the media rights deal, you're going to sign a new deal in 2020 after 2027. So there's revenue there. And here we go. In section 8.16 of the collective bargaining agreement, it covers the salary cap rules. And I'll tell you, as a labor organizer, I think it's a very well-written CBA. It's very clear. I think any layperson could look at it and get a pretty good understanding of it. But it gives you the exact number, the base of the salary cap, and then the total amount every team can spend is that base of the salary cap plus the revenue share from the previous season. So, you get ad dollars, all that stuff, that kind of factors in, and that makes up a team's whole salary cap. So, yeah, clearly, I think from this reporting and from the way Burke laid it out, the Washington Spirit is making a bet of, even if the salary cap is, let's say, like $4.5 million, and we're paying one right winger, Trinity Rodman, $1.8 million. I'm picking that number out of the sky. I have no reporting on that. Yeah, we can afford that. We can move the roster around the way we need. And this is where we get into that dangerous territory of like the spirit of the rule, or the spirit of the rules, as the league said. Why would you get to tell an organization, hey, you're spending too much of your salary cap on one player? I think you get into a very dangerous game if the league starts trying to legislate that. There's no max contract in this league. I do want to state that.
From your downloading, was it an issue of a max contract number, or was it like a team salary cap number?
When Burke talked about, because Burke was quick to point out there is no max salary for any player. Right. And it seemed like the league was concerned that perhaps Washington Spirit was like overestimating what the salary cap could rise to in 2028, and that the contract they would be signing Rodman to would maybe be too much of what the salary cap might end up being. You know what I mean? Like they might be overestimating it, which again is why. And I don't mean to put words in Megan Burke's mouth, but I think that's what she was intimating in her interview, and in the comments she gave The Athletic as well.
I'm not an expert on the NBA salary cap situation, and but I do know that they have projections to account for some of these longer deals. So right off the bat, if you don't have a year 3, year 4 projection that's kind of accurate, or something that's published that can say, hey, here's what we think it's going to go to. It's going to go from 3 to 4.8 or whatever in year 4, and then 5.2 in year 5 or whatever. That should exist. Everybody should be working off projections that go out many years, because in theory you could sign a player for many years. In this instance, Trinity Rodman for 4 years. So we should at least have 4 years visibility, with the understanding that it's a projection. Now, devil's advocate, what if the league takes a step back, and a team has to walk back a 4-year contract? It's not something that's not a precedent you want to set. Maybe Washington's not in a position that they're at risk for that, but maybe other teams are. So, I mean, it is a tricky situation, but there has to be clear visibility to these teams on what the projected salary cap is, what teams are able to spend. And if that doesn't exist as a league, I don't think you can step in and say, Washington Spirit, you cannot sign Trinity Rodman, a player that you've cultivated and developed, because things move quickly. A Barcelona could swoop in, Chelsea, a City, an Arsenal, a Lyon. A lot of teams could kind of come in and try to make a move here. And for the league to put forward half a statement, that clearly doesn't have everything X's and O's, all the I's dotted and T's crossed, it puts the Spirit in a tough situation, because now if you're Trinity Rodman, maybe a day or two is all you need to kind of like change the tenor of how you're thinking. And it could change the future of an entire franchise. This is like what makes it really tricky.
Buddy, once again, I think you're spot on here. And so I'm going to put on some of my speculation hat here, and I'm going to, I might sound cynical when I'm talking about this kind of stuff, but, I do, like I said, I do this for a living. And again, I'm going to stress, I am not an expert in the NWSL's collective bargaining agreement. I have not read the whole thing all the way through. I will say, to your point about the projections and what happens if you might feel like you have to walk back a contract, in that interview on the women's game, which everybody should watch. Sam Hughes is a legend. She does a great show. It was a great interview with Megan Burke. There is a mechanism in the league rules similar to the amnesty clause that the NBA had that one season, where you can essentially buy out a player and it won't count against your salary cap. I think Megan Burke referred to it as like a release valve sort of clause. So even if disaster did strike and like the league starts to tank a little bit, a franchise would still be protected from that. But this is the part where I'm going to sound a little cynical, is your piece about what if something changes? What if now this delay causes, like, what if Juventus just came in and was like, do you want to live in Italy, Trinity? What if Roma shows up and says, how does Rome, Italy sound? Would you like to live there? Or, Paris, France, or Madrid, Barcelona, like you said, any of these wonderful cities across the world. I don't think it's off the board that league owners wouldn't mind if Trinity Rodman had her head turned by another team in another league that paid her that money before this contract gets settled. And you say, Grant, that's stupid. Why would the other owners want to lose the potential face of the league, or in many people's eyes, the face of the league? And now let me ask you this. If Michelle Kang was reportedly prepared to pay Trinity Rodman, quote, well over $1 million, end quote, in annual salary in 2028, what do you think Temwa Chewinga's agent is thinking about right now? And Temwa Chewinga, for that matter, or Barbara Banda and her agent? Because I'll tell you, if I was Temwa Chewinga's agent, I would look at the past 2 seasons, and I understand some matches have been missed due to health concerns. I would say, well, Temwa has 35 goals in 48 matches played in the last 2 seasons. Trinity Rodman has 13 goals in 38 matches. So yes, it is 10 fewer matches for Rodman, but it is 22 fewer goals for Rodman. So if I'm Chewinga and her agent, I would say if she's worth well over $1 million, what is my client worth? And I think the owners might be afraid of that.
I mean, I think we're at a period where the values and the contracts are going to start to accelerate very, very quickly, and I think
Yep.
that makes it tricky because if you're Berman in the NWSL, you want to keep pace, but you don't want to overshoot, and then you don't want to undershoot because I don't know, Michelle Kang's pretty scary, like she's got a lot of money, and
If she does.
and if she loses Trinity Rodman to a team that she doesn't own, I don't know. There could be a lawsuit. There could be. I mean, I don't know that seems reasonable. Like
Sure.
to look at a franchise and say, okay, well, this franchise was worth. I don't know, I'm just going to be silly here. I don't know, 200 million, with Trinity Rodman and 170 million without Rodman. I don't know. So that's a difference. It's certainly not worth the same. If one of the most famous players on the planet, one of the most famous players that plays for the U.S. Women's National Team is not on the team anymore, that's tangible, right? That can be quantified. So it definitely puts us in a tricky situation. We're going to keep tracking it for sure. And shout out to
Yes.
pseudo friend of the pod, Haley Carter, on the job switcheroo, stepping into a tough situation right off the bat. Stepping in as the Washington Spirit's new president of soccer operations. Enjoy the first week there, Haley. Shout out to Haley Carter. Congratulations on the new job, and I'm sure if anybody
Legend.
is going to be able to get it sorted, in short order. I mean, is there a better person than Haley Carter to kind of sort this kind of thing out?
I don't know if you could find one. I mean, we've said it on this show. She's a military veteran. I'd follow her into battle. I know Haley Carter knows exactly what she's doing. So she doesn't strike me as a person who's going to run away from a challenge. I get the feeling she's going to meet this one head on.
Let's go. All right. Let's talk about the U.S. Women's National Team. And this will be obviously after we drink a beer, of course, that's been sitting here just staring at me. So after we drink a beer, let's talk about the U.S. Women's National Team and the biggest questions going into 2026. So, Mr. Grant Engle, where do you want to get started?
I would like to get started with that beverage because, like I mentioned, I do this as a day job. I got to take a break from talking about collective bargaining agreements all day at work to talk about a collective bargaining agreement tonight. And that always works up some serious thirst for your boy.
Cheers to that.
Cheers to that. Cheers to the football on the field. Cheers to you, but also cheers to every player getting paid what they're worth, man. I mean, I know we've said it a million times on this podcast.
Every podcaster too.
Workers' rights are human rights. What's that?
Every podcaster too.
Sure, yeah. We want, yeah. All working folks. We should all be getting paid what we're worth, no doubt. So, like I mentioned at the top of the show, Dino Decespedes, super producer extraordinaire, podcaster extraordinaire, newsman, had a great idea to talk about some big questions going into 2026. I'll pass it right back to you, buddy. What's your first question? What should we be thinking about most when you think about the U.S. Women's National Team heading into 2026?
So I put together the little doc that we share, little Google Doc. I'm going to go with my third, the one that I had in the number 3 slot in the doc.
Wow.
Did the U.S. Women's National Team find a solution at number 9? And this is coming off the heels of Kat Macario just cooking, just taking my commentary about her not being able to finish and could you put a couple of those in the back of the net. She's just doing it for fun, just sticking your tongue out at me, when as the camera pans to her, just making a fool out of your boy. Anywho, I think the United States, the reason I posed the question that way, did they find the solution at number 9, is because Macario, if she can score goals at this pace, which she can, we're seeing it in real time. Her ability to do that, plus float and be active in the midfield, be active out on the wings, be able to switch places, overlap, underlap, like just keep defenses in a state of just straight peril. I think is a really interesting curveball for the U.S. Women's National Team. We're coming off like triple espresso, like the three-headed monster. You can kind of close your eyes to see where everybody's standing, see the positioning. This U.S. attack feels a little different. Feels a little bit more. There's a lot more flow to it. People are running in different directions. The ball is going in different directions, going in and out, left and right. It kind of is reminding me of like every time Emma Hayes had talked about utilizing and leveraging the wide channels. I think I finally kind of figured out what that meant, or I think I figured out what that meant, which is basically we have the bodies and we can connect the passes. Let's stretch everybody out to the absolute max, And then when you think about Macario being able to like just be anywhere and everywhere and be effective, that all of a sudden creates like a really tantalizing approach for, hey, how are we going to take on some of these absolute top teams in 2027?
I think it's a great question. Um, Obviously, you have to love the way Macario played this year for U.S. Women's National Team. I believe she had 7 goals in the calendar year for the Stars and Stripes. She's looked fantastic. It feels like every time she steps on the field, these last couple times she's played, she's scoring a brace, or notching an assist, or having some key passes. Her hold up play is incredible. But you mentioned triple espresso, and so I don't want to be a wet blanket here, and maybe it's not a wet blanket, but like if the question is, did they solve, or did they find the solution at number 9? I think that the solution for the number 9 already exists, and she will be returning in 2026. And her name is Sophie Wilson, 2-time NWSL MVP. She is a special player, especially in that number 9 position. I think if you have her and Kat Macario, with Kat Macario starting in the 10 and Wilson at the 9, they can do some of that overlapping stuff. Well, Wilson has good touch on her passes as well. Um, I mentioned, obviously, Wilson is a 2-time NWSL MVP. I believe she has a golden boot in there with the league. She has 44 goals in 5,594 minutes in NWSL. That's a goal about every 130 minutes. Um, they never unlocked her in the 23 World Cup, and it's because they had her playing, underneath Alex Morgan, and sometimes out on the left, and it just didn't jive. But we saw it with triple espresso. If you have Sophie Wilson as the tip of the spear, she's one of the best number 9s in the world, in my opinion.
Yeah, I mean, I think it's going to be interesting because, I'm really kind of probably projecting out to a few different matchups. And I know we're probably not going to see these matchups in 26, but we're going to see a few of them in 27. You think about the Germanys, the Spains, the Englands. You got to have different things to go to, I guess,
That's true.
And I think like Smith is obviously great. And, when she's on, she's on. But in 23, we've seen her get neutralized, like I think in some spots, and it's not really on her. I actually think that could be compelling to see her like out on the left again, or just maybe have, and Macario, if she was in that spot, it would definitely be a false nine, which would leave a lot of space for, Rodman and Smith or whoever, Cooper, Sears, whoever you have up there to kind of go up and get busy. But Macario, I also, if I can rewind a little bit, watching Kat Macario versus Italy spent a lot of minutes just being like, oh wow, Macario is just maybe the best player here. Like, there is just there's no future that has a healthy Kat Macario not heavily featured, and I think we've seen it this year from Emma Hayes. She gets minutes, she gets to start. Like she's as sharpie maybe as we had this year with Sam Coffey, because kind of in that conversation too for 25, but Emma Hayes loves her, and I think like she's so effective in the middle of the park, and she's effective pushed all the way up and then also dropped way deeper. So I'm not sure what that means. I'm not sure if that changes like a Mal Swanson situation, or if it pushes Smith out, or if it drops Macario deeper. But then you're thinking about, and this actually leads me to my second big question. You remember that time when we used to talk about the USA midfield as maybe a question mark? I think it's safe to say we're probably past that, because you look at some of these names in the midfield. Olivia Moultrie, Sam Coffey, Lily Johannes, Claire Hutton, Lindsay Heaps, Rose Lavelle, Jaden Shaw, Corey Bethune, Hal Hirschfeld, Corbin Trader. A couple players that got that minutes this year: Lola Bonta, Sam Meza, Jalen Howell, who re-entered the fray against Italy, and
Mm-hmm.
one of my NWSL best 11s. I'm just going to give her a shot. Taylor Flint, I think, who should be kind of like on the periphery. Not going to be any. I
Yep.
don't think is going to be in the 2026 mix, just because I named like 30 players that all kind of could be in that midfield mix. What do you make of this situation? Is it an embarrassment of riches? Is it a situation where we've got to figure out our identity? Do you see something here where you're like, I think actually the combination might lie within these 2 or 3 players?
Well, you named 14 players there, right? And so like when we think about like a 23 player roster for 2027, what you're usually doing like the 7 defenders,
Yeah.
7 midfielders, 6 attackers, 3 keepers type of model, right? So yeah, I mean, it is absolutely an embarrassment of riches. You need to think about those combinations that you're talking about. You need to think about balancing some experience players who might be at their apex prime between the ages of like 26 and 29, some players with younger, fresher legs between the ages of 21 and 25, and then your players who like how could I legitimately field a team that's going to the World Cup without a legendary presence? You think about like a Rose Lavelle in the midfield. Obviously, it's going to be past 30. I think when we hit this World Cup. Emily Sonnet in defense, but we're talking about the midfield here. So I think, Emma Hayes is going to have to think about this in the scope of like what you talked about. What are the combinations I'm going to need to beat some of the world's elite teams? Spain, England, Germany, Japan. I would say Brazil are in that mix.
Mm-hmm.
France, I didn't mention them there. I think, they're kind of, they got the players, but we never know what the hell happens to them in all these major tournaments. They might have to compete with Norway. You don't know what that's going to look like in 2027. So
I was waiting for that.
I you knew I was going to shout them out. It was never not going to happen. So I would say though, like if we're talking about the absolute like Sharpie players,
This is tough.
I mean, we've talked about.
Go for it. Go for it.
It's like it's hard to do like the absolute Sharpies, but like you talked about Sam Coffey, she got a ton of minutes. She is an absolute bulldog out there. She just gets things done on the field, and we've like Lily Johannes. I think she absolutely has to be out there. Who knows how good she could potentially be in 2 years? She might be the second or third best player in the pool in 2 years.
She's already hitting passes that nobody else can hit. Like right now, yeah. It's not even like, we'll project forward. Like she's doing it right now. And I think you mentioned the Sharpie, and I'm glad you mentioned the 7. Just for the purpose of exercises like this, I always go 7-7-7. With the understanding that it's got to be like 7-7-6 once you get to it. But even 7, it's like Coffey, Moultrie, Johannes, Hutton, Lavelle, Shaw. That's 6. And we're still looking at Heaps, Croy, Hirschfeld, Trader, Labonta, Meza, Howell, Flint, and I'm sure I'm forgetting 1 or 2 more. So it's going to be very, very tricky. Is there any player here? Because I've got my eye on somebody that I think it would be surprising, but I think could struggle actually to break in and stay in, to that inner core. And we can also just be in a situation where there's 60 players cycling and it's just like, all right, we'll get to 27, or who's healthy, who's cooking, and we'll pick 23 from the 60. So it might be a little bit moot, but a player like Croy Bethune, I'm going to be interested to see what kind of 2026 she has with the U.S. Women's National Team. Didn't log a ton of starts or minutes. Her skill set, what she's capable of, but the U.S. jersey does a weird thing, where you see some players put it on and they're good. Lily Reel, Avery Patterson, Emma Sears, they just throw it on and it's like they look the part. They're
Michelle
just
Cooper,
fucking ready.
Yeah.
And then there's other players that it just takes a little bit of time. Like Olivia Moultrie, I think, is on her second go around with the U.S. Women's National Team. Emily Sam's taking some time to kind of, get fully up to speed. And you can just see the delta between the US performance and like the performance in the league. Corey Bethune, I think, is in that same situation where we're going to need to see a couple moments, maybe a breakout performance or something this calendar year to kind of get her into that midfield mix, like in a way where she's there and she's staying. Cause like, I think right now she's sort of like one of the bubble names, which is weird to say.
Probably, if you think about like that kind of attacking minded central midfielder, that puts her in the same mix with Jaden Shaw, Rose Lavelle, and
Mm-hmm.
Olivia Moultrie.
Yep.
That's tough competition. So that's four right there. Now, if you took those four plus Coffee Johannes Hutton, that's a good seven in my view. I think you might feel a little light on the defensive if you had kind of like four more attacking focused midfielders and three kind of defensive minded midfielders in that setup. I think I'm going to go with the other Washington Spirit midfielder who we have a lot of stock in, who we admire and have appreciated her game. Same draft class as Croy Bethune. I think it's going to be tricky for Hal Hirschfeld because, who does Emma Hayes, what does she want the makeup of that midfield to look like? Is Hirschfeld with Coffee, Johannes, and Hutton, is that too much like defensive minded midfield presence? I think it's going to be an interesting question.
It's all so interconnected because, if you take a player like Hirschfeld, who we love, you have to make some concessions. You have to make up for it in some other spots, maybe the forward spot, or maybe in defense, you kind of like do a little something, or maybe like a Carriabella or somebody that can attack too, from the outside,
Yeah,
you kind of like Patterson, you just start to elevate. But the midfield, I'm just going to put a pin in that for now and say 2026 in a good way. I'm excited to see what they've got up their sleeve. I've got one more. Do you have any kind of itching questions 2026 for this team that you're going to be thinking about, looking for, when they take the field again?
I know I've mentioned it before, so I don't mean to put us into reruns, but when I saw that Jordan Bugg and Naomi Girma were going to play together in that match versus Italy, I mean, let's go, man. Like, I know Emily Sonnet is still an excellent center back, but you have the potential to have two big, strong, smart, calm, like passing-minded, can get up and attack type of center backs on your team at the same time. And they could be flanked by Emily Fox and Lily Reel. Like, we're knocking over opponents all match with that back four.
Emily Fox, I mean, I know she's good and she's fast.
She's been great, man.
Looked extra good, extra fast.
She's so good.
I mean, like, she's an irreplaceable player. You think about like
I agree.
Going against like the top teams, and you also see around the world what these top teams are doing from the fullback position. Sandy Baltimore, Ellie Carpenter, Batier. Like it's like Esme Brooks. Like now it's like teams and countries are putting real firepower in those outside spots and utilizing them in ways that are super innovative. And to have a player like Emily Fox on the right, and then to kind of go into this window, maybe not go into this window, but maybe go into Q4 with some questions at left back, and then have a player like Lily Reel just be like, shit, I could do that. And then that like kind of be the case. That's also pretty exciting because now it's from both directions. There's no, I mean, you were saying, oh, well, when you were talking about the midfield, you're like, oh, I don't think the seven, I don't think that there's anything wrong with the seven. It's like, I don't think there's anything wrong with any seven you could make from the names that we put forward. Like it's tough to kind of put forward a bad seven. There's so loaded, but I just really like that in some ways. This US team is also innovating, and I think we kind of like, there's so much PTSD from 2023, just being like, oh, it's shit. Cause like, I think in a lot of ways we can kind of see it coming. Like we're watching, we're like, oh man, like this is weird, right? This is weird. Am I right? This is not supposed to be happening. We're just like looking around like, and then we're out the tournament. So now it kind of feels like there's I don't know, some stuff happening in the lab. I'm sure the whiteboards are all dirty, a bunch of dry erase all over them, diagrams and a bunch of cool stuff if you get to go into those back rooms. But I don't know, it should be a great year, man.
I think so. And I think that brings us to our third burning question for 2026. It's got to be a battle of goalkeepers. And I think the major question is right now, at the beginning of 2026, I have something for potentially the end of 2026. But at the beginning of 2026, it certainly feels like we have a two-keeper race between Seattle Reign Football Club's Claudia Dickey and Manchester United Football Club's Fallon Tullis-Joyce.
We'll get into this one when we talk Champions League, but United really missed Fallon Tullis-Joyce against Wolfsburg. That absence made a big difference. But in all seriousness, shifting gears to Claudia Dickey, I think obviously you've seen Dickey up close a bunch, tracked her evolution, kind of like the growth in her career. Watching her against Italy, she just has such command back there, and I think we were talking about like the weight of the shirt, and I think PTJ Fallon Tullis-Joyce has a little bit of that other look to her, where still kind of getting her bearings, like head a little bit still on a swivel as part of this team. She doesn't play in the NWSL, so she's not currently, but obviously has that in her background. But Dickey just looks like she has a little bit more command, a little bit more chemistry with the defenders, looks a little bit more comfortable back there, and obviously is an excellent keeper coming off a monster season in the NWSL. So probably, obviously this is going to be definitely something that we're going to be watching in a huge way. But I think Dickey's got the edge. And then the last quick note that I'll say, you look at the competition 2025, some big names on there: Colombia, Japan, Australia, Brazil, Canada, but not quite a murderer's row, right? There's Jamaica, Ireland, Portugal, New Zealand, a couple against Portugal, Italy. I'm going to be interested to see against whatever the biggest matches that we are able to line up next year, what the goalkeeper situation looks like. If Dickey does get like that first, gets that first team treatment, so the bulk of the starts, and then how Dickey holds up in the international game against some of those more higher powered offenses. I have full confidence in her, but I would love to see it. And then obviously PTJ, I'm sure we'll get a look. And then I think we're just going to learn a little bit more about, who's got the edge.
I think that's right. And for anybody who's watching this program and didn't watch like us through the NWSL season, so I live up in Seattle. I cover Seattle Reign Football Club, and Welsh legend Jess Fishlock, the 2021 NWSL MVP, when talking about Claudia Dickey, and I had asked her about Dickey's play, looked me in the eye and said something to the effect of, "I haven't felt this confident in a goalkeeper since I played in front of Hope Solo." And so that is a heavy comparison to make, and I don't think Jess Fishlock did it lightly. And so that is, to call it a glowing endorsement might be underselling it. And so the thing about Claudia Dickey, and I don't claim to be any kind of goalkeeping expert, but I am pals with Van Crisp, who is the co-host of the Great Cooler Guild podcast, which you should immediately listen to. It's a podcast about Seattle Reign.
Cosign.
Van Crisp was a goalkeeper when she played, and she basically talked to me about look how easy it is for Dickey to make saves based on where she's standing before shots are even taken. And you had kind of talked about like her ability to like be in the spot, and like she just has great instincts alongside her great size and her diving ability, her hand strength to push the ball away, to keep push balls over the bar, things like that. So she has all that going for her, and she's comfortable with the ball at her feet. And then Fallon Tullis-Joyce has unbelievable ball skills, is incredibly smart, with her positioning as well. Has great leaping ability, diving ability. I think it's going to be a great race. But as I mentioned at the beginning of this, I did mention, at the end of 2026, what happens if another goalkeeper emerges who perhaps has a great 2026 NWSL season? And my friend, where you live in the Bay Area, Bay FC zone, Jordan Silkowitz, great friend of the show, Jordan Silkowitz. Mm-hmm. Let's just keep an eye out for her. And I just want to say it now. At the beginning of December of 2025, Jordan Silkowitz for USWNT. Let's go. Get her on the roster.
I'm with that. Can't believe that. I can't believe one of our coaches called her Swiss cheese as a young child. Just unbelievable.
Where's that guy now?
That one still burns. Or a girl. Get her out of there. I mean, hopefully they're out of a job.
Whoever it was, get them out of here.
I don't actually mean that. They're probably a really nice person, but super co-sign on the Silky. In 2026, let's get Silky some minutes. Get her between the pipes. See what kind of her game's going to elevate. You know that we're going to see a next level of Jordan's game. So I love that call out. We will be watching the goalkeeper situation for this U.S. Women's National Team. All right, my good man. I think we did it. I think we properly looked ahead. We properly talked little Trinity Rodman and the whole contract fiasco situation. Is there anything else you want to hit? Actually, let me do a little quick episode calendar. I mentioned at the top, Champions League Match Day 5. We're going to have a preview coming up here very, very soon. Match Day 5 recap shortly thereafter. All these games are happening December 9th, December 10th. They'll be here shortly. Our 2025 Best 11. That is right around the corner. Make sure you're subscribed, following your boys on all the socials. All right, now I can do it. Is there anything else you want to hit before we get out of here?
I think that's it, buddy. Maybe I got some good rest over the holiday. Maybe had to shake off a little rust to do this episode. So I appreciate everybody for bearing with us.
Absolutely. Can I share some Spotify Wrapped results with you that we got today?
Sure. We're on Spotify in case anybody's interested in that kind of thing.
Let's fucking go. All right. How about 152,000 minutes of listening last year or this year? That's exciting. Love to see it.
This is people listening to our program?
Yeah, on Spotify. not just listening to Spotify. That'd be funny. Our show was in the top 10% of videos on Spotify as an outfit. That's exciting. Top 10% of videos. Okay. We're a top 10 show for 200 plus fans. Shout out to you. We appreciate you. And we are the number one show for 19 of you on Spotify. Let's fucking
all right.
What can we say?
We appreciate you. That's pretty good.
Yeah.
And I got to tell you, at least one of those people is not me. I looked at my personal Spotify Wrapped, and Into the Channel is not my number one listened to podcast. So okay, and I don't know if ITC was your number one.
I actually saved mine a little bit, my Wrapped, so I haven't seen my personal Wrapped. I'm going to check it out, and I'll report back before we record again. I'll be up to speed, and we could share some notes there.
Okay.
If you're on Spotify, if you're listening on Spotify, leave us some comments. That's a thing that happens on Spotify. Sure. Right now, we've only got one best friend on Spotify. You already know what time it is. Mac Daly. You already know. We appreciate you. Most of our friends, a lot of people that we shout out are mostly YouTube friends. I guess it's a little bit easier to comment. And YouTube also popping at the end of the year. So I want to shout out some friends as we hit the end of 2025. Knock through a couple names just because, I mean, these people mean a lot to me. So I want to give them a quick shout out. Gretchen, you already know. For Cruyff's sake, one of the best names in our comment section. Flonga Slammer, Dave Palms, Rumble Wagon, Blade Runner, Panda. Boy Named Blue, Justin, Michelle, Contactful, who I mistakenly called Contentful. My bad. Contactful, you already know what time it is. Mac Daly, second mention. MLS, Kobe, Rachel, Ad Astra. I'm sure I'm forgetting a bunch of great friends from the pod. Oh, a couple that I want to mention. Friend of the show, Owen Spangler, was talking about our jump rope conversation. And he said, next time y'all are making wagers on picking a match, I think the loser has to post a short of themselves jumping rope to a No Doubt song. I think Hella Good makes for a great soundtrack. I kind of co-signed that, Owen Spangler. Shout out to you. And then the last YouTube commenter that I wanted to mention, who left this little gem below our Gotham FC post-game interview video. Shout out to at Jose David Puentes Guerrero 1968, who chimed in with the comment, "I love you, Sarah." I believe was talking about Sarah Szymanski. So shout out to you, Jose David Puentes Guerrero 1968. Very efficient.
Nice. All right. I'm sure Sarah, the feeling is, I'm sure the feeling's mutual between Sarah. I'm sure she appreciates the sport just as we appreciate the sport. What a list of legends that you ran through there. Thank you all for always supporting the show and just being, as I've said before, the nicest people on the internet. We greatly appreciate it.
Yep. This has been another episode of Insert Channel. Thank you for watching, listening, hanging out. If you enjoyed the show, we do this every single week, sometimes twice a week. Next week will be twice a week. We'll see. If you enjoyed the show, make sure you're checking us out. YouTube, Spotify, Apple Podcasts, wherever you like to watch or listen. Like, subscribe, follow, comment, leave us a review. As mentioned prior, patreon.com/into the channel. Great way to support the show. Into the channel merch. Yeah. Maybe even the greater way to support the show. Probably greater. It's at least as great. Mm-hmm. Links to all of the above and much, much more in the description of this episode. And a big thank you to my co-host as well, Mr. Grandigo, for being a key part of my 2026 plans. Right in the centerpiece. Big ass Sharpie. You already know what time it is. I appreciate you, bro.
Likewise, buddy. Nobody I'd rather do it with. And again, thank you to everybody. We got the Champions League coming up. If you're a U.S. Women's National Team fan, or maybe an NWSL fan, and you clicked on this video, the UEFA Women's Champions League is a celebration of life. It's one of the greatest tournaments in any sport, anywhere in the world. Lock in with us. It's unbelievably enjoyable to watch. We'll welcome anybody onto the bandwagon. So thank you again for supporting the show, and we will see you all next time.